Good morning and good afternoon and welcome to IAP2's monthly learning webinar. On behalf of IAP2 Canada, IAP2 USA, and IAP2 Australasia, I really want to welcome everyone to this event. We're super excited about today because we're going to be talking about the IAP2 Core Value Award winners, our project winners. So we're super excited about that and looking forward to getting going. But before we get going with today's monthly webinar, I'm going to hand it over to Drew, and he's going to be providing a little bit of housekeeping. Drew, over to you, please.
Well, this is being recorded, so if you want to get some of the collateral materials from this or just review this for your professional development, the thing is this webinar is being recorded and we'll have it online, usually within a day or so, quite often earlier than that. I'd like to remind you that we also have a survey that we send out afterwards, just a few general questions. If you've got any suggestions for future webinar topics, any comments, any suggestions for how to make these webinars better, we appreciate that if you would fill that out and send that back to us. That too will come out at the same time that we send out the link to the webinar itself. This is an interactive session, and so we encourage you to take part in different ways. You can ask questions. You probably saw the little graphic that came up about how to ask a question during the webinar, where you can ask it verbally by clicking that little yellow hand icon, or you can type a question into the question box. It comes up as a chat, and Amelia can break in and ask that question at any time pretty much, or if you've got a comment to share, do that as well. We also have some polls that we'll be asking you to take part in throughout this, so feel free to join us in that one as well. It's a good way to get us just interacting with one another and with our presenters. And so I'm going to hand this back to Amelia with, I think, some rather exciting news to share.
Well, thank you very much, Drew. I gratefully appreciate that, and we are looking forward to this being quite an interactive session. So please do send your questions either in the chat box or the question box, and we'll be pleased to respond to that. And so, yes, just quickly before I give the good news, for some reason we are seeing more of Drew's screen today than we normally do. So not only are we seeing his PowerPoint, but we're also seeing a couple of other things on the board. So my apologies, this is a bit of a technical glitch, but we're coming out of Drew's screen pretty soon and heading over to our presenters. So thanks for your patience on that. So now back to the great news. So we're going to be hearing from both Nova Scotia and the Maricopa County, Arizona Flood Control. And last night, they had the international awards in Australasia, in Adelaide in Australasia. And we're really pleased to announce that Nova Scotia Health won the International Award for Project of the Year. So Nova Scotia Health won the International Project Award. So congratulations to Lisa, Jacqueline, and Lindsay. They just heard the news, so I know they're pretty excited about this. But without further ado, let's introduce Nova Scotia Health as they're going to be going first. Lisa Sutherland is a team lead with the Nova Scotia Health Authority community health teams and a registered dietitian. She has been with the community health team since they became operational in 2010. Lisa has worked in a variety of areas, including not-for-profit, public health, healthcare management, and as a clinical dietitian in both urban and rural areas. She's joined by Jacqueline Humphrey, and Jacqueline is a wellness facilitator and registered dietitian with the Nova Scotia Health Authority. She has been working with the community health team since they began in 2010 and has a special interest in supporting behavior change. Jacqueline has worked in a variety of settings, including private practice, research, inpatient and outpatient clinical nutrition, and cardiac rehab. And of course, both Lisa and Jacqueline are joined by Lindsay Sutherland. And Lindsay is a health service manager with the Nova Scotia Health Authority and has a Master's of Nursing, Community Health, and Health Policy. She has held numerous roles in healthcare and not-for-profit settings, including frontline nursing, education, community development, program development and evaluation, policy, and health system planning. She is pleased to be part of community health teams since 2015. Well, Drew, can you please give the screen to Lindsay, and we're going to get going with Lindsay's project. And Lindsay, Lisa, and Jacqueline, are you ready to go?
I think we're good to go.
Excellent. Over to you, and congratulations again.
Well, thank you again. I think my cheeks are already hurting because I'm smiling so much. We're pretty excited to hear that news, and I just wanted to mention as well that Lindsay Dixon has joined us as well today because she's the team lead that was involved in a lot of the fourth phase that we'll be talking about today. We wanted to have her here as well in case we have any specific questions about phase 4, which you'll soon learn about. So, can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to say yes, because I realize they're on mute. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting us here today to share our work, and also we are looking forward to learning from others. And a big thank you to IABQ Canada for the honor of winning the Core Value Award for extending the practice, as well as Project of the Year. And big thank you to IABQ International for Project of the Year. It's been quite an honor, and I have to say I've only been myself with community health teams for the last year, and it has been a thrill to work with these amazing individuals, and I can't wait to share the work that they've done with you. So I'm just going to do a bit of an intro, and then I'm going to hand the reins over to Lisa and Jacqueline. But for those of you who don't know, the community health team is a community-based health model that focuses on health and wellness and supports individuals and families to build knowledge, confidence, and skills to better prevent and manage risk factors that are common across chronic health conditions. So the vision for community health teams has grown from a proof of concept, not even really having one site, to actually operational in 4 distinct and diverse communities with a staff of about 30 people. And over the years, community health teams have held over 75 engagements with over 1,200 people, and the team serves a catchment area of over 400,000 people. So in addition, we've also had over 440 sessions to develop partnerships with community. And program uptake has really reflected the community interest, because we've had over 30,000 client first encounters since its inception, and certainly year to year we continue to grow from that. So today we're excited to highlight our successes, our lessons learned, and some of the examples of the tools and techniques that we've used to embed meaningful ongoing citizen engagement in our processes to develop and implement community health teams in the Nova Scotia Health Authority. So back in mid-September, I was really fortunate to be able to attend the North American Conference in Montreal, and I have to say I was really struck by how being a bit new to the IABQ process, but how diverse the presentations were. And I think we're going to see that today from Arizona with their flood control initiative. But as I was going to the sessions, there was a lot, urban planning, transit, flood planning, into healthcare, which is the area we're interested in. So our objectives today are not really about sharing what exactly community health teams do. Please check our video or website out at the end if you want to learn a bit more about that, but really to share with you the processes we've used to embed engagement through our model of care. So the objectives of today are to share how we use engagement to design the community health team conceptual model, and then how we've used it to inform ongoing program design, and then how we've used that to then expand to a geography of over 400,000 citizens across 4 sites, and then how we do almost go back and drill back down to how we customize programs to high-needs populations. So just to give a little bit of context, we really know in healthcare that in order for things, we needed to do things differently if we really want things to be different. So, and particularly in Nova Scotia and the Atlantic provinces, we do know that there's increasing levels of people living with chronic conditions, and one of the key factors, it's one of the key factors threatening the sustainability of our healthcare system. And we certainly in Nova Scotia have higher than Canadian average rates for obesity, lower physical activity, low fruit and vegetable consumption, all of which we know are significant risk factors for chronic conditions. And we also know that traditional approaches to healthcare and how they've traditionally been managed have been very reactive versus proactive, and more based in acute care instead of the community, and have been tended to be a little bit more provider-driven or traditionally paternalistic versus citizen-driven, and putting citizens and individuals in the driver's seat of their own health. So again, it was recognized we need to do things a bit differently. But with every challenge, we know comes opportunity. And late, I guess it was around 2008, 2009, there was a lot of commitment from senior leadership to really dedicate resources to do things differently. And they made a bold move to challenge the traditional processes and how we think about providing health care. So the proposed model was community health teams that would be informed and designed and shaped through ongoing public participation and citizen engagement. And establishing community health teams was identified as a way to help reduce these high rates of preventable chronic conditions and to build community capacity and to support health and wellness in Nova Scotia. So just to give you a sense, here's a map. So right here, that area, if you're not familiar, there's Nova Scotia. That's our mighty province. And we have a population of about 945,000 people in the entire province. And it's important to know for people that we used to have 9 health authorities. And in 2015, we went from 9 district health authorities to 1 health authority. And so that was quite a change for our health system in the last year or two. So I only point that out so that if you go to look at any of our materials on our website, if you see Capital District Health Authority, that's still us. We're now known as Central Zone within the Nova Scotia Health Authority. So I just wanted to point that out. So in the Nova Scotia Health Authority, we are now divided into 4 zones. So the zone we are in is called Central Zone, which is the yellow area on the bigger map right here. And then this is kind of a breakdown of a blown out portion of that zone. And here's the 4 locations of our community health teams. So community health teams, where they're currently positioned, cover, like I mentioned before, a population of about 400,000 people. And when you look at the map, that's about 42% of the population of Nova Scotia. So it's a fairly significant piece. And in this area, we have a mix of urban, suburban, and rural communities that all dwell within this community. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context of where we're operating out of. So from this point on, I'm going to hand the reins over to Jacqueline, who's going to talk a little bit. We're going to start talking about our phase 1 of how we went about locating our very first site, which would have been in Dartmouth. I'm going to see if I get, oh, right there. That was our first site was opened in Dartmouth. So from the beginning, before our staff were even hired, a site was selected and citizen engagements were recognized as a key step for success. It was recognized that each community might have unique and different needs, and that in order for true transformation to happen, to be effective, to be sustainable, we needed to consult with citizens and the communities early on. So the question from the beginning, and the one that we revisit often, is how do you embed ongoing citizen engagement when implementing new models of care to ensure the right fit for communities? You may have experienced this in your own work, but maintaining that excitement and commitment to engagement once a project is off and running needs to be intentional. So what we're going to do is walk you through each phase of our engagement. I'm going to speak to you about the first 2 phases. So phase 1 involved engaging citizens through informing, consulting, and involving in the conceptual design of the actual CHT model. This was our opportunity to learn from the community as we started to build the model for the community health team. The communities identified their strengths and their needs to support their health and wellness, and this became really the building blocks for our CHT model. The community of Dartmouth, as Lindsay showed you on the map, was the first area where the engagement took place, and this is where the testing grounds for our engagement techniques were developed. So it's important to note that we do have the 4 sites, and the 4 sites have been phased in over a period of 5 years with multiple citizen engagement initiatives guiding the design and implementation along the way. So I'm guessing you probably want to know, how do we actually do this? I'm going to highlight a few of the things that we did.
So here's a snapshot of our initial engagement. We started with a citizen and stakeholder engagement framework that was developed based on IAP2 to guide the work. And this included lots of different things, but I'll just mention a few. Clearly articulating our purpose and objectives, a clear link to decision-making processes, selection of appropriate engagement techniques, evaluation of process and outcome, and reporting back on the results to the public. And in 2010, we actually received an honorable IAP2 mention. We also had a promotional plan, and it was a broad promotion of open events through school, community posters, flyers, messages throughout community networks, development of a website, and a mail drop postcard that was delivered to every household in our targeted area. And on the slide there, you can see an example of the postcard up on the left-hand side of your slide, or right-hand side of your slide. We also had initiatives. So participants were strongly valued, and they received a grocery store certificate in recognition of their time and effort. Childcare, refreshments, and transportation was available if that was needed as well, to eliminate as many barriers as possible. The community conversation design included conversation with citizens, partners and providers, family physicians, as well as youth. So we really tried hard to include everybody that we could in the conversation. A few highlights of the engagement are listed here. As I mentioned, we did use multiple techniques, formats, and different locations. In terms of locations, we had open-style, cafe-style conversations with citizens, healthcare providers, and decision makers. We had semi-structured conversations with our youth, community organizations, and family practice clinics. And we had kitchen table conversations with hard-to-reach rural areas, because the other formats didn't work so well with that group. At each engagement session, it was clearly laid out the questions that had to be asked and the process that we were going to use for engaging participants. We used multiple mediums during the engagement, including PowerPoint presentations. We had a concept video that we showed, and we also used some storytelling through a theoretical example of something that was called Kim's Story, which really showed how a proposed CHT concept might affect the life of somebody living at that community, in that community. We also had themes that came out of our engagement that were captured through the creation of mind maps. An example is on your slide there. We did have a visual, a local artist that was there to capture the mind maps, as well as a visual of the ideas that were generated through the engagement session. The other thing that we did once the engagement was complete, we followed up with a validation with a sample of individuals who actually participated in the engagement process. The findings and subsequent planning directions were then posted on a website, and a summary report was posted online and distributed throughout the community. We also made these reports available to anybody who participated in the engagement process as well. So again, on your screen is an example of one of the summary reports with our youth engagement. In terms of successes from phase one, there were lots of them. I'll just highlight a few things. We ended up reaching 164 citizens, 82 providers, 70 youth, as well as health systems, academic organizations, and physician practices. So that was pretty exciting for us. Participation evaluation results were very, very positive. Overall, we received a 3.4 out of 4 for satisfaction with participating in the process. And the engagement findings really directly informed our staff complement and the competencies, along with kind of guiding our programs and services directions. Human resources positions that were new and novel within our organization were created to meet the needs of the community. And we had ongoing support at an organization level to really support this unique community-based model. Another really interesting thing that came out of this, we developed principles for how the community health team would work with communities, and this included the promise that we would engage with the community on an ongoing basis in order to be responsive to the needs of the community at every level. So this was one of the big successes that came out of it. As with most things, we did also identify some challenges along the way. Probably the biggest challenge would have been the time and resource investment for such a successful engagement. Time that it took to come up with the engagement plan, to develop the tools, to create promotional material, to identify space, to figure out food, to make sure we had trained facilitators and appropriate audio-visual supports. The other big challenge was we quickly realized to get that adequate representation across our geographical area that there were some hard-to-reach rural communities that we had to intentionally do things a little bit differently for them. Some lessons learned along the way. This likely won't surprise anybody, but we really quickly realized the importance of being flexible with the design and the process. So even though we had a structured way of doing it, we had to be flexible. Using a mail drop for effective promotion of our engagement session. We also quickly learned that utilization of a gift certificate to promote participation with harder to reach community members was a real draw. The importance of having competent and trusted volunteers that the organizers of the event could entrust registration and other logistics with. From each engagement session, we actually learned valuable information about the community's wellness priorities and priority populations that we should be targeting, and this was different each time. We also learned a lot about existing community resources and how we can be working and communicating better as a whole within our province. And the last thing was that we realized that it was really important that the events and the summary reports were pulled together by an external facilitator. And this was important because it provided the community with the knowledge that the model was shaped through an unbiased perspective. So not coming from what we thought, rather from that unbiased individual. So I'm going to move on to phase two. Phase two is the ongoing program design of the community health team. So once our citizen input was analyzed and our model was developed, we opened our two sites, Dartmouth and the Chebucto Community Health Team, and we quickly acknowledged that by working together with partners and other community groups, a much broader range of programming could be offered to be more representative to the community needs and the priorities of the community. So through a strengths-based approach, the CHTs developed a process to help coordinate program offerings delivered not only by the community health team, but also by a broad mix of other health groups, not-for-profit groups, and community groups. The process was developed to offer free space to these community partners to allow a greater number of programs to be offered in the community setting and to also improve access to these programs. The CHTs worked extensively with the legal department within our organization to ensure the groups outside of our organization could offer programming without any liability risk. So that was really important. With this ongoing program design, or our partner programs, what we did was we actively sought out partners who could offer programming free of charge to the community by using the CHT space. We created an advisory committee that was comprised of citizens, partners, and health providers. What the committee does is they review and score applications received from community groups and partner organizations to offer the programs in our CHT space. The scoring was developed with community groups and citizens and is really based on priorities identified during the community engagement, as well as ongoing feedback that we get from our client feedback forms when citizens attend any of our programs. The other neat thing about our partner programs is that there is a shared promotion of these programs. So our partners promote their programs, but we also promote the programs on the CHT website and in our program flyer. In terms of successes, lots of successes with this phase. There's been a great uptake by our partners with the EOI process, and we've created some really strong partnerships with a range of groups. The ability to have free, accessible community space has brought increased wellness programming to the community, and now there are lots of programs that people wouldn't necessarily in the past be able to access. Through this process, thousands of community members now access these partner programs on an annual basis, and currently we have about 40 unique partner programs throughout the community health teams. And this programming offering continually expands as we hear from our community that they're interested in new things. In terms of challenges, again, there's always some challenges along the way. One of the biggest challenges would be the scheduling and logistics piece. So as a community health team, we want to make sure that we offer programs when people are available. Our partners have programs that they want to offer at certain times, so it's a bit of a scheduling nightmare at times, but we're working our way through this. The other challenge that we have identified was the logistics to receive and process all of these submissions in a time that aligns with our schedule. So our program flyer comes out 2 times a year now. It used to be 3 times a year. So we need to make sure that that this is all coordinated. And we're currently designing an evaluation process both from citizens and partners to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our community. Lessons that we learned along the way. One of the biggest things that we learned was to the importance of providing an information package to any interested partner to provide some background on the community health team as well as details of the process. But what we quickly realized is that oftentimes people are too busy to read the big package. So a one-pager was developed to succinctly describe the process and also be a bit of a promotional tool. We're in the process now of really formalizing an evaluation piece to look at the effectiveness of our partner programs and provide some constructive feedback to our partners, again, to make sure that that this is in keeping with the needs of the community. So I'm going to hand it over now to Lisa, who's going to talk about the last 2 phases.
Hi, Lisa. Lisa, it's Amelia here. I'm just going to remind you that you've got only about 2 minutes left now, and I know that's not a lot of time, but I do want to make sure that we also move on to Arizona's. So, so I just leave that with you.
Appreciate it, and I will condense knowing that. So I think in phase 3, the first 2 community health teams were opened. Since 2010, those two opened. They expanded their boundaries several times, and 2 new community health teams are opened. So there is a need to continually engage new communities to determine programming needs. So that is what we did. So during this expansion phase, we did have successes. We engaged 253 citizens, 38 providers. Our successes were very similar to the initial engagement. We had a very high satisfaction rate and similar outcomes. One of the reasons being is that we use existing conversational design. So we intentionally use the same design along with some things that we learned along the way. That was really important because it gave us the ability to compare community to community, to look at needs and resources and be able to use those in the best way possible. Also, ongoing engagement. Citizens know that we are listening. They see us out there, we are engaging them, and we're actually acting on their identified needs. Some of the challenges, similar to the initial engagement, because we use the same format, there was very, very similar. Hard-to-reach groups are always a priority for us, so once again, that direct mail to identified high-need populations is really important. It really helps us to get them present. The timeline was very tight. The first 2 teams were already up and running, so they were doing this as well as the regular operational work. And for the 2 new teams, there was a lot of readiness in the organization at that point in time to go ahead with the new team, so the timeline was fairly tight. So that was definitely a challenge. What did we learn when we expanded and opened new teams? We used the same facilitators. We hired an external facilitator to help us with this. Once again, this person, it was not as much of a learning curve, and it also helped us to have a continuity to that part of the engagement so that we knew we were doing things along a similar way. Also, using a mix of both experienced staff and newer staff on the planning team so that we had that experience of what happened before, but we were also bringing in new thoughts, new ideas, and giving those staff a chance to experience this larger scale engagement was super important. Very quickly, so our programs and services are for everyone, but the community health team intentionally reaches out to vulnerable and higher need populations. So we do targeted programming for those groups. And we have a fairly large number of newcomers to Canada, especially in 2 of our teams have high numbers. So one of the groups that we reached out to was the Butanese and Nepalese community. They were within our community geography, but we weren't seeing them in our programs. So through meetings with community partners and looking at data, we heard that this was a group that we needed to engage. These are some of the tools that we use through training, toolkits. Probably the most important thing here to mention is the important relationship with the YWCA, who manages a lot of the support for newcomers. So having that close intentional partnership with them to help reach this community through open conversations. What were some of the successes around this? We were able to identify key areas, and we did develop programs based on their needs through these open community conversations. We found out what the barriers were, and we were able to address those by providing appropriate interpretation, have a safe location to have these programs and services, make sure that they were at right time of day, the right literacy level, and ensuring that people could actually get to the program. So really taking all those things into consideration. Some of our challenges in this, most of us are new to working with newcomers, so that was a new experience, a very exciting one. Time required for translation. We didn't know how long it would take to offer programs with translation, so there was a lot of learnings around that, and it's a very exciting thing actually to do. With the newcomers even attend. And it was really important to be knowledgeable of cultural considerations. Every culture is a bit different. For example, on this slide, it reflects the norms around punctuality and group dynamics vary from culture to culture. So it's important to know those and incorporate them. It's important to be flexible, consistent location and time work for this group, offer food and snacks. I think we all agree food and snacks always work. Have the right mix of interpreters, and make sure you incorporate feedback. It's really important not to ask questions that you're not willing to do something back, especially those around culture. Then that helps to build trust. speaking of trust, the community health teams, we work very hard to establish trust with our community partners, and our engagement process is a big part of that. They know we're there, we're listening, and we're working together closely with them. Just very quickly, these are our guiding principles of how we work with the community. These were developed based on our engagement. This is what we heard from citizens of how they expected us to show up and be present. And once again, this is being recorded, so you guys are going to see this later. This is really unique here in Nova Scotia. Healthcare, this is a new way of working and a new way of being, this intentional engagement and having programs and services actually developed based on what we heard from the community. It's new, a little bit new to healthcare, certainly new here in the Nova Scotia Health Authority, but like Lindsay said earlier, if you want things to be different, you need to do them different. And just at the end, this is a picture of our absolutely amazing team. We do a lot with not a lot of people. And if you want to know more about our programs and services, then you can contact us and you can reach us through our website at communityhealthteams.ca.
So thank you so very much. I know we rushed you a little bit at the end, but I know also that you're certainly open to hearing from people, and we will. We're going to move on to the Arizona team right now, but we will come back to asking questions that the audience might have. So thank you very much. And Drew, I'm going to get you to hand the screen over to Teresa and Dana while I introduce them. So thank you very much for Nova Scotia, and congratulations. So the Maricopa County, Arizona Flood Control District. Teresa Pinto has been working for the Flood Control District for 19 years, and for the last 12 years as project manager overseeing watershed planning studies that involve identifying the flood hazards and risks. She works with the public and stakeholders to identify alternatives and develop plans to reduce the flood risks. She also has initiated other unique projects, including developing an arid plant nursery for the county that does not need irrigation systems, and creating a DVD to help decision makers, the public, and other stakeholders understand the purpose and need of the flood control district in an arid region. Dana Mann is a former project manager with Gun Communications in Phoenix, who recently retired to spend more time with her family. She has more than 25 years of experience in the field of public engagement and communications in both the public and private sectors. And much of her career has been focused on supporting the planning, design, and construction of large public infrastructure projects, which include street, freeway, bus, light rail, utility, and of course, flood control projects. So it's with real pleasure that we now hand it over to Teresa, who, and of course, the Maricopa County, Arizona Flood Control District was the winner of the IAP2 USA Project of the Year. So congratulations, Teresa. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to present at this monthly webinar. We were very honored when we received the National Project of the Year award, so we're very excited about that. So the title of our presentation is The Public Engagement to Help Community Understand Its Flood Risk, and specifically for the Pinnacle Peak West Area Drainage Master Study. And Dana and I are both going to give this presentation, so we're basically tag teaming this presentation. But first I just want to go through a quick background of my agency, which is the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. And we've been around for over 50 years. We have three main activities, which are identifying flood hazards and risks, and we do that through floodplain mapping projects. We have over 4,000 linear miles of floodplains mapped in Maricopa County. And then we also do watershed or area drainage master studies, of which the Pinnacle Peak West ADMS is an example of. We regulate development within the special flood hazard areas so that new development is safely built, and also so new development does not adversely impact existing development. And then when possible, we mitigate flood hazards. Our structural mitigation is our primary focus, but we also have some non-structural programs as well. So to set the context of Maricopa County and the Phoenix area, Maricopa County is located in central Arizona. It's a very large county. It's over 9,200 square miles. and that's larger than 7 states in the United States. It is in the Sonoran Desert, so we receive about 7 to 10 inches of precipitation a year. And we do have quite a few rivers throughout Maricopa County, and rivers I would probably should have put quotes around them, because most of the time our rivers look like this top picture, but our largest river, and many of these rivers, can have really large flood flows. So for example, our largest river, which is the Gila River, the peak flood flows are up to 220,000 cubic feet per second, which are the same as Niagara Falls flood flows. However, Niagara Falls typically has an average daily flow of about 80,000 cubic feet per second, whereas the Gila River is pretty much 0 cubic feet per second. So a little bit about the Pinnacle Peak West ADMS study area. It's located in northeastern Maricopa County, and it encompasses the city of Scottsdale, which is located here in green. The city of Phoenix is located here in gold, and then there's also some unincorporated Maricopa County, as well as a couple other small communities up on the north side. One of the more notable aspects of this study area is the large number of floodplains that have been mapped. And these areas in the light blue and the dark blue are the FEMA mapped floodplains for the 100-year flood. And a lot of those were mapped in the early 1990s, so we felt like they were outdated, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to do this study. The goal of this study is to help reduce flooding risks for residents, and that's existing residents as well as future residents, by identifying the flood hazards and risks, as well as identifying solutions to reduce the flood hazards and risks. So one of the problems that we often have to face dealing with flood control in the desert is the perception of flooding versus the reality of flooding. And common perception is that it never rains in the desert. Well, it is true we do have infrequent rainfall, but when we do get it, it's often very intense and can occur, get a couple inches of rain in one storm. A lot of people too, they have commonly have said, they have lived here for 25 years or 30 years and they've never seen water in that wash, yet we're showing them a floodplain map that shows the wash, as well as maybe 100, 200 feet away from the wash as being in the floodplain. So it's really hard for them to perceive that. But a lot of these dry washes can have very high flows and large floodplains. In fact, the Gila River, which I was talking about earlier, the average width of that floodplain is 1 mile, and in some cases the floodplain is up to 2 miles wide. And then we've heard this a lot too, that hey, we just had a 100-year flood last year, so we're not going to have another one for 99 years, so I'm safe from all the flooding. Well, the 100-year flood is really not the best name for the actual occurrence. What it really means is that the 100-year flood is based on the flood that would occur from a rainstorm that has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. So that means that the 100-year flood, or that storm, can occur maybe 3 times a year, or it might not occur for 400, 500 years. So it's just based on the probability of receiving this type of storm. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dana.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa. So for those of you who were paying attention a few slides ago, you will probably have the answer to this, but we're going to do a quick interactive exercise just to see what you think the average annual rainfall is in Phoenix. And the reason we're doing this is to kind of help you understand how difficult it can be to help people understand and believe how likely flooding is to occur in our area. So the options are 4 to 6 inches inches or 10 to 15 centimeters, 7 to 10 inches or 18 to 25 centimeters, 11 to 13 inches or 30 to 33 centimeters, and 14 to 16 inches or 35 to 40 centimeters. And just to put it in perspective, the average annual rainfall in the United States is about 37 inches or 94 centimeters. So if you could just, oh, go ahead, Amelia.
Thanks, Dana. The poll is up on everyone's screen now, and everyone should have had an opportunity to select. So I'm going to close it, and then we're going to give you the responses, Dana. So just give us a sec as we close this. And the responses are, sorry, oh, just a second, I just lost my screen. The responses are, and I can't see them, so just give me, sorry, my apologies.
Oh, that's
Drew,
okay.
could you read those out for us, please?
Yeah, 65% were listening earlier, 7 to 10 inches or 18 to 25 centimeters. 24% went for 11 to 13 inches. 12% went for 4 to 6 inches, and nobody bit at the 14 to 16 inch suggestion. So about 2/3 of them figure it's 7 to 10%.
So as you can see, not much rainfall. Now we're going to see the next slide. Go ahead and can we get? Okay, so we know how much annual rainfall that we receive here, but how much rainfall would we need in a 24-hour period to get that 100-year flood that Teresa talked about earlier? So here are the options. So again, this is in a 24-hour period, 1 to 2 inches, or 2 to 5 centimeters, 3 to 4 inches, or 6 to 10 centimeters, 4 to 5 inches, or 10 to 13 centimeters, or 6 to 7 inches, or 15 to 18 centimeters.
Thanks, Dana. So this is up on everyone's screen, so we'll just see how smart our listening audience is. And we're going to close it down now, Drew, and let's see how they responded. So 13% said 1 to 2 inches, 33% said 3 to 4 inches, 33% said 4 to 5 inches, and 20% said 6 to 7 inches, Dana. So back to you.
Okay, well the correct answer is 4 to 5 inches. And so you can see that given our average rainfall for the year, to get a 100-year storm, we would need to get half the annual rainfall in a single storm to get the 100-year flood. And what's interesting is that it can be different levels of rainfall for the 100-year flood depending on what area of the county that you're in. So for example, Teresa mentioned that we had a 100-year storm in our area, and that was back in 2014. Well, that actually occurred in another part of the valley. Even though there was rain up in the study area, there was only about 2.5 inches of rainfall in the study area. So, but people heard on the news, well, we had a 100-year storm, so now we're safe because we've had this 100-year storm and we didn't get any flooding. So that's been a challenge to try and communicate, number one, for people to believe that that much water can fall in a 24-hour period, and then to understand that it can happen there and that it actually has not happened within the study area.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the flood risk that we identified in the study area, and through our hydraulic and hydrology modeling, we identified over 1,900 houses or buildings that were at potential flood risk for the 100-year storm. And what's interesting is of those 1,900 houses, about 60% of these houses were outside of those mapped floodplains that I showed earlier. And then for the 10-year storm, which actually has a 10% chance of happening in any given year, there were 550 houses at risk of flooding. Also, this area is very treacherous to drive in anytime it does have a significant amount of rain, and we showed that 1 in 5 roads are hazardous during the 100-year storm, so that means that your car could actually get washed downstream if you're crossing at that peak flood stage. Okay. Dana?
Okay, so we've learned a little bit about what the 100-year flood is, and so let's just do one more interactive poll. So true or false, Phoenix has about the same chance of receiving a 100-year flood as St. Louis, Missouri, which is along the Mississippi River, right? So is that true or false?
All right. One last chance to redeem yourself, participants. So let's see what you have to say. Drew, let's close this. And 83% said true and 17% said false.
Good job. That is true. So again, it's the statistical possibility of receiving that certain amount of rainfall. So it can and does flood here, just as it does in St. Louis. Oh, I think we just need the next slide up. Okay. So now we understood what the flood risks were, and we designed an extensive public participation program to make sure that we were providing information to those in the study area in a variety of ways so that they could participate in the ways that they chose to make it easy as possible for them to participate. So we prepared newsletters and sent them out periodically to those who lived in the floodplain, and as well as those who lived in areas without homeowners associations, with the idea that they wouldn't be getting that information from their HOA. We did mass emails to let people know about study results and where to get them online. We used our study partners, social media to help spread the word. We also conducted traditional public meetings, but we made sure that we had a lot of interactive information at those meetings. So for example, we brought out computer stations with the computer models so that people could enter in their address. So you can see that picture at the bottom of the screen, and they could see where the flooding was adjacent to their homes or their business. So that was really helpful. And then we met with a variety of homeowners associations in the area. There are more than 40 HOAs that representing this area. So we met with them about 30 times during the course of the study, some of whom we met with more than once if they had flooding problems. And we brought out information specific to that particular community. So you can see the map there on the screen. So that was an example. We would show where the flooding depths would be at locations in the community, so they could see where homes that might be at risk and roadways that might be flooded. And we really use those HOAs as a conduit to help reach people, and then also to help get them engaged in the process, attend our meetings, participate in the process. So we had more than 1,200 interactions with the public over the course of the study over the course of several years.
Okay, and we also used several different techniques to describe the flooding problems. And we were fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to use state-of-the-art technology to prepare and identify the flood hazards. So for example, in our 95 square mile area, the whole area was divided up into squares that were essentially 400 square feet in size, so 20 feet on each side. And there were about 6 million squares throughout the whole study area. And for each of those squares, there's detailed information such as where the water, the dominant flow direction of the water, the peak flow for that 100-year storm or whatever storm we chose to model. We also have model results for like the 10-year storm, for example. And then we'd also show how deep the water was too. We also used photos and videos whenever we had those to, again, illustrate the flooding hazard. So, for example, this picture here is a picture in the study area of an unfortunate resident that had a pool and beautiful landscaping basically wash away during a relatively small storm. And needless to say, he did not rebuild that pool or put in the landscaping. We also describe the problem using analogies such as comparing the flows in these washes and rivers compared to known rivers that people might have seen before around the area. So one of my favorite analogies would be the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon, which this is a friend of mine that's rafting the Grand Canyon in the Colorado River. And the average daily flow of the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon is about 10,000 cubic feet per second. Well, that's also the same as the 100-year peak flow for one of the washes that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So just to have people visualize that, I thought was very helpful. We also showed how deep the water would be too, and this map down here is a little snapshot of what we would present to the homeowners association meetings. And for example, these houses that you see here in yellow, for those houses we identified as having 6 to 18 inches of water next to them. The greenhouses would have between 18 inches and 30 inches, and then the orange houses would have over 30 inches of water. So again, just kind of showing them how deep the water actually could get for their particular house and in their community was helpful. Also with our modeling, we could develop these animations that I'm going to show you. And this is a rawhide wash, the wash I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. But basically this shows the 100-year flood falling from the upper watershed down to the lower watershed. And you can see the different colors of blue. The darker blue colors are deeper water. There's also some orange colors that's really deep water. But just showing, again, these types of animations were really helpful to kind of convey that message that it really does flood here. This is what the 100-year flood is going to look like for this particular wash.
So we created a lot of other different types of illustrations and brought them to the meetings and used them in our public information collateral materials to help illustrate what would happen if a home flooded. So this is an example where to really illustrate how just 1 inch of water in a home can cause significant amount of damage, and then as it continues to go up, the costs just escalate very quickly. So we use this to help encourage residents who are identified at risk to purchase flood insurance if they didn't already have that, to help reduce their financial risk of flooding. Because in all cases we couldn't necessarily eliminate the risk, but we could help them take steps to reduce their risk.
Another tool we developed was an online results map, and this was based, you could go to the internet and search for this website, and what you would do is when you got to the website you could type in your address and it would zoom to your house. So for example, here's somebody's house here, and you can see exactly how deep the water would be for the 10-year storm, or for the 100-year storm in this situation, but we also did the 10-year storm as well as the 25-year storm. So this tool was used quite a bit by residents.
Another online tool that we developed was called Report a Flood, where residents could upload photos and videos and other reports of flooding that occurred at their home or in their neighborhood. And this was really useful during the data collection phase of the study to help validate some of the modeling results that we were seeing, as well as identify problem areas. Another thing that we did very early in the study, before we knew what all the hazards and risks were, where we conducted a flooding tolerance survey, and we did this at the public meetings and through the HOAs, and we had it available online as well. And what we did was, it was to help understand the threshold at which flooding became a problem versus just a nuisance, because we had heard from people, a lot of people that said, well, the flooding isn't a problem. So at what point does it become a problem, and where does the community believe money should be spent, and when? So this was very, very helpful in identifying those problem areas. So again, this is going back to core values, where people really need to believe first that there's a problem before they can accept potential solutions.
And the largest flooding hazard we identified in the study area is rawhide wash, and this is the animation that I showed earlier. And this is the wash that actually has the high flows of the 10,000 cubic feet per second, which again is analogous to the Colorado River average daily flows. It's also an active alluvial fan floodplain, so that means that at this location here, at the top of this floodplain, the water can shift locations and create new channels. So you don't know where this 10,000 cubic feet per second, which is a lot of water, you don't know what direction or what channel it's going to take. So it's a very hazardous situation. There's a lot of people within this floodplain. It's over 10 square miles. So I believe there's 4,000 properties or households in this floodplain. And this was the only site that we considered for regional structural mitigation because, for one, it was cost feasible, and also the other areas, although they did have a lot of flooding in those areas, there really wasn't a good regional solution that was even possible. So this was the only one where we felt like could be considered for a structural mitigation measure. And one of the issues with rawhide wash and proposing a structural mitigation measure is that there has been a lot of history with this area. Back in the mid-90s and late 90s, there was a project called the Desert Greenbelt. It was a very large flood control project that would have mitigated this rawhide wash floodplain and reduced it from 10 square miles to probably more like 1 square mile. It would have significantly reduced it. Basically made it a very small wash. At that time, the public outreach was sporadic, and it wasn't that they weren't doing enough public outreach, but they were doing it at milestones. So these projects, because they're very complex, take a long time. So they might have done a public meeting at the beginning of a project and then maybe waited until 30% design was finished. And that might take a year and a half to get to. A lot of the residents in the area thought that the project would increase development, when in reality the area developed regardless. And in Arizona, as in many places throughout the United States, you can build in floodplains as long as you elevate your house and build in accordance with the floodplain regulations for your community. So it did not, by not doing this project, didn't necessarily preclude development, and it did not you know, basically prevent more development from occurring. It was going to occur anyways, as it did. A lot of people didn't think flooding was a problem in this area. They thought some of the videos that the project teams showed at public meetings were made up, and they thought that flooding was very much exaggerated. So the project was killed for many reasons, and at the time it was the largest city council meeting in the history of the city of Scottsdale, and they just basically voted against it. The city council did. So these are some of the issues that we've had to address, some of the repercussions because of the Desert Greenbelt project, the lack of trust from the city of Scottsdale, from the residents for the city of Scottsdale, as well as the flood control district. They felt like there was no transparency. They also felt like flooding was very much exaggerated, and that's one thing that we were very careful not to do. We know that the 1% annual chance flood is a conservative type storm, but that is the storm that we, as well as FEMA and many public agencies throughout the United States, regulate to and develop to those standards. And a lot of people didn't want to spend money or impact the desert. So a lot of people felt like the people who did move into this floodplain after nothing was built to mitigate the floodplain, they felt like these people, these residents, knew that the floodplain was there, therefore why should anybody spend money to help fix the problem and impact the desert. So these are some of the issues we had to address.
So Teresa, just a heads up, you've got a couple of minutes left.
Okay,
we're almost done.
Perfect. Yeah, we have about 3 more slides. So we knew what we were up against in the rawhide wash area, and we wanted to ensure that we had a very collaborative public involvement process and ensured that the community was on board with whatever potential solutions that we went forward with. So we held a public meeting, and we presented all the information about the flood hazards and the risks, and then we asked the community for their direction on how to proceed. And what we did was we organized the meeting in a workshop format with roundtable discussion. So at each table they had sheets where we had 3 options: building a potential flood control structure, option 2 was redelineating the floodplain, and 3 was to take no action. And so they listed at each table, they talked about the pros and cons of each of those alternatives, and at the end we actually didn't go until, we didn't realize this until later, but we added up all the pros and cons for each option and found that really 57% supported a build alternative. So again, the intent of this was just to ask the community for permission to just evaluate the potential to evaluate building flood control structure. So this is very important because a lot of times when you have these types of infrastructure projects, the agency will go out and they will already have come up with potential solutions, and they'll ask people to provide input on a draft recommendation. And this was really permission to even proceed in evaluating flood control options, because we knew we needed to rebuild trust within this community. One of the other really successful things that we did was establish a community stakeholder group, which was composed of residents within this area, both those that were affected that benefited from a potential build option, but also those that would be impacted and not benefit. So, for example, somebody who might live up against a wash and would now have would be looking at a flood wall instead of the wash. And it also included community activists and major landowners. So over the course of about 6 months, we had 3 meetings, and we took them out on a field trip of the wash to help, and it was really as a process of discovery. So as we had the information and the results, we would come back to them on the potential options. So we spent a good amount of time presenting the potential alternatives for structural flood control options, the pros and cons, the costs and benefits, the components and locations of the different features. So we had a very, very good dialogue, and those community members were very engaged. So the intent was and the goal was to get a consensus recommendation from the community on how they wanted to proceed, and ultimately the recommendation was for one of the build options. But again, this is a very effective way to get input when you have a very complex issue to convey.
Okay, so the key points was that this was the most extensive public outreach that we have done for a study here at the Flood Control District, and a lot of the impetus was the Desert Greenbelt project and the history of the area. So we knew that we had to go above and beyond what we normally did to be successful in this area. We also developed a lot of new tools that can be used for other studies and projects. We developed the Report a Flood tool, the online results map. We developed a flooding resource guide that basically answered just a lot of general questions about flooding, who to contact about their roads when they're flooded and washed out, so just general basic information, and the flooding tolerance survey as well. The information we provided was provided in many different ways, and it was easily accessible, but our message was always consistent, and our primary message was to know your flood risk. Knowledge is power. In this case, ignorance is not bliss. A lot of people, have said, well, you put me in a floodplain by mapping a floodplain, for example, or showing them the results. And our answer is no, we don't put the water there. The water physically goes there. We're just showing you where the water is flowing. Also, what we did for this project and this study has affected future public involvement activities for other studies we do here at the district.
Excellent. Well, Thank you so very much, both Teresa and Dana. That was really terrific. I really appreciate that. We're sort of running out of time, so I would like to pose one question to both of you, and I think maybe we'll start with Nova Scotia and then come back to you, Maricopa County. And that is that in both cases, from an evaluation perspective, you started off with people that weren't quite sure where you were heading and how they could be involved. So how do you, and evaluation is a very important part to any core value award winner. So knowing at the beginning and then knowing at the end is important. So how do you feel, and we'll start with Nova Scotia, how do you feel it changed over time, and do you feel that you got your participants on board as a result of all of the initiatives you did? And I know that you've already given us some be bold and be unique, but also any last words, and we'll start with Lindsay and her team. So let me just double check to make sure that Lindsay and her team's mics are off. Lindsay, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, we were talking, but then I realized, okay. So yeah, no, I think, and I'll ask Jacqueline and Lindsay to jump in, but I think going through the actual process of the engagement and then actually running the service has really helped build the model, not only build the model, but promote the model and promote the team, and always learning and looking at how we can engage with the community to improve what we're doing has been a big part of making us a success. And I think just promotion is something always in the forefront of our mind, and when we have people who are engaged and believe in the model, they're actually champions of promoting it as well. So that's been one of the key takeaways.
Thank you so much. And Drew, just to let you know, we are still seeing all of the other things on your screen. Just thank you so very much for that, Lindsay. Anybody else from your team want to offer any comments, or shall we turn to Maricopa? Okay, I think so. Teresa and Dana, what's your thoughts? Do you think that the evaluation changed, that people came on board and understood why you were doing all of this work? Because it does sound a little scary when we were looking at some of your pictures. So do you feel that, you know, did you hear back from participants that this had been worthwhile, and any sort of big aha moments?
It was interesting, just thinking of a few specific people. One of the people that we always kept involved was a community activist that was involved in the Desert Greenbelt Project, and one of the biggest opponents against the Desert Greenbelt Project. And so just seeing how she was also part of that community stakeholder group as well, but just seeing how she kind of, understood and saw the other people's perspective, that her downstream neighbors that actually could be helped by this project, even though, she was still not 100% for it, but she at least got to understand their perspective. And then, just seeing the whole project evolve. We started with, Flood Talk 101, just to explain basic flooding issues and how do we map a floodplain, and that was kind of a unique thing we did. And then went all the way to the community stakeholder group. I was just amazed how many people were coming to our meetings, and even the homeowners association meetings. I was in people's living rooms many, many nights, and just, it was almost hard to get out of the HOA meetings on time. So, yeah, I was really pleased about how people came around and were actively involved and really cared about this area. Dana, did you have anything to add?
I think the only thing, we started out conducting stakeholder assessments with a lot of the folks that were involved in the Desert Greenbelt Project, as well as City of Scottsdale, and so we could see again the sentiment at the very beginning and what the perception was of the agency. And then we did see that evolve through the comments that people would make at the public meetings, and through the other input from residents at the HOA meetings. And it was really heartening to see that we were making an impact and changing the way people viewed flooding, and that it wasn't also so much of a selfish, how am I just impacted, but how are other people impacted, and that they were willing to compromise to come up with a solution that worked for everyone in the community.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. A really big congratulations to certainly Teresa and Dana and the Maricopa County, Arizona Flood Control District for winning IAP2 USA Project of the Year. And of course to Nova Scotia Health with Lisa, Jacqueline, and Lindsay. Thank you so very much to everyone for participating in today's learning webinar. And of course to Nova Scotia Health, congratulations on winning IAP2 Canada's Project of the Year and now winning the International Project of the Year as well. I think that is just fabulous. So big time congratulations. I just want to remind everybody about our upcoming webinar in November. We'll have the 3 major Core Value Award winners, the BC Ministry of Health, which won Organization of the Year in Canada for their Patients as Partners programs. We also have the Organization of the Year in the U.S., the City of Hillsborough, Oregon, which won for Hillsborough 2035. And we'll be joined by the Jefferson Center and the Maxwell School of Public Affairs, which won Research Project of the Year honors in the USA for clearing the air. And again, we found out that the Jefferson Center and the Maxwell School also won the International Award for Research of the Year as well. So we're looking forward to welcoming them. And we have a request that's going out to their participants still on the line. In our December webinar, we're going to be doing social media and P2 with civic engagement consultant Susanna Haas-Lyons, and she really wants to know about your experience. She wants to know about the really great ones and the ones that go really bad with online engagement. And so she's doing, providing an online course, an online form that people can fill in, and there's going to be a link to that both on the IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA website. So she's trying to get some stories from you that she can bring into the presentation that she's going to be making in December. So 2 interesting webinars coming up, and of course thank you to our project winners for the great webinar they've given us today. It's always very interesting how we choose to engage people and why and at what level, and I think both of you have helped us to understand a little bit more about how that can be done and how that can be done well. So thank you to everybody. We wish everyone a great day, and we'll see you hopefully back in November for our Organization of the Year and Research of the Year learning webinar. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Drew and Amelia.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks, everyone, and congratulations, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, you guys.